Hello and welcome to Module 6 of the Fundamentals course within Python. Today we're going to talk about nested conditionals. If you haven't seen the previous ones, please do go and watch them because we go over the very basics of if statements and things like that. In this module, we're going to be going over how we can read a flowchart that we're given and code a nested conditional code block to do whatever is shown on the graph. So firstly, a nested conditional sort of looks like this. It's like sort of like stairs that go up and down where things are nested within one another. By the way, nested just means either tabbed in or spaced in. So that's what the word means. Okay, so let's look at the first example. This is based off of the flowchart that we see above. So just briefly going over the flowchart, we can see that once the order is started, a question is asked whether you want a cheese or veggie sandwich. If veggie is answered, it immediately serves the veggie, and the program basically stops because the arrow does not lead to anywhere else. However, if you did say cheese, it goes to another conditional. And by the way, conditionals in UML diagrams like this are represented by this like sort of diamond shape that's tilted, rotated. So that passes through another conditional where it asks if you want cheddar or manchego, and then based on the result, it serves the correct order. So let's look at the example right here. Again, if you get this message, please click run away. Please click run anyway. We have moderated all these for safety, so there's nothing to worry about. Okay, so let's first try the first one right here. Let's put V. So this should immediately serve us this, and the program should stop. And like we see here, that did happen. So let's try the cheese one. So let's put C for cheese. Oh, by the way, just one thing. If this thing comes again, it's one of those collaboratory things where, like when you use inputs, if this is a bit too long, you do get a scroll bar, and you do have to kind of scroll. So just kind of bear with that. So here, since we answered with cheese, it has gone to this conditional right here, which on the code is here, and here we can pick whatever we want. So let's put M for manchego, and it serves that order. The same thing will happen for cheddar. Okay, so this is a little more comprehensive version of the one that's above. It fundamentally does the same thing. However, it checks if you put any invalid inputs. So for example, if I put, if I just put some random letters in there, it says, sorry, we don't have dast today. And this check happens both at the first level of checking, which is the veggie or cheese. And at the second one, so let's test this out. So let's put cheese. And here, if I mess it up, let's put, R. It says, sorry, we do not have that today. So it's just another version of the one on top, a better version. Okay, so this brings us to task 1, which is a very simple conditional sort of program. As you can see, we have two different conditionals, one after one another, and it's very similar to this one up here. So first, we obviously want to get an input, again, very similar to the first one, like that. And then again, like similar, we're going to check if they say yes. So, we're going to check if they say yes. So we're going to, we're actually going to use the lower method just to sort of sanitize the input in case the user uses a capital letter. So if that lower equals y, which in our case means yes, we're going to ask them if we want a full hello as shown in the diagram above, or as instructed in the diagram above. We can see that right there. And if and now after this, since full hello is a conditional, we're going to have to do another round of if-else checking. So if query 2 is yes, we're going to have to do something. So for that, we're going to add a conditional here. And if that's yes, we simply have to return a hello to the user, again, as shown in the diagram above. Now, since we have all the true parts of the if statement, we have to add the else. So for the second round of checking, we'll do else, and then we're going to do print hi as instructed by the diagram. I'm going to put an exclamation there. And we also need an else for the first round of conditionals. So we're going to go all the way back to our first line, and we're going to do else print, and let's print a hand waving emoji. Just to sort of show a greeting without saying hello. So now that I've written this code, you can actually see how we can visualize these nested conditionals. So you can see that there's similar to this one up here. There's sort of a pattern that goes to the that slowly progresses to the right, and then since you need else statements for all those, there's another pattern that slowly progresses to the left. So we test this out. Let's say yes, we do want to say hello. Full hello, yes. So this should say hello, yep. Let's test another condition. So we'll say no right off the bat, and we should see a waving emoji. There we go. And let's test the last conditional, which is yes and no. So this should return a hi. There we go, done. Okay, so moving on to task 2. Again, it's very similar to this one. However, we do have another conditional, and it's a little more complicated because we're using like the string checks and all that. So as shown in the program, we first need a list, or sorry, not a list, a string with a bunch of bird names. So I've just picked eagle, pigeon, crow. And now we need an input from the user. So we're going to, again, call the input method with a variable of bird guess. And then we're going to use a special string Boolean checker. If you remember this from, I think, module 3 or something it was, we can do this. So what this means is that if bird guess, which is our input right here, is a word that's contained in the bird names string, which is right here, that returns true, and the code block nested within this statement runs. So since this is the first try, we're going to print yes, first try. All right, and we'll include a little exclamation there because they got it in the first try. Now, if they did not get it, which is going to be else, we're going to try it again for the second try. So again, we're going to take a very similar approach. We're going to ask the user for the input like that right here, guess the bird, and then we're going to do a very similar checking method. However, if they do get it correct, we're going to say a second try because it's their second try. Now again, similar to the first one, we need an else here to catch. Catch if this does not resolve. So if the guess is not one of our bird names, and when it does resolve to else, we're going to do a similar thing again, something like this. So this, as we can see, it's third try. Now for this also we need an else right here. And at this time it's going to be a pretty simple code block because they're out of tries, because it's their third try. Again, you can see the structure that I talked about where things are being nested into the program. And this is what's sort of nice about Python. You can really visualize this because Python basically enforces you to nest your code, unlike Java and JavaScript, which use curly braces. So let's test this out. Oh, there we go. That's our first thing right here. So yeah, we do have an unexpected indent right there, and that's just because for no reason it's indented. Again, it's one of those Python things which make it really useful, but kind of frustrating at times. So to resolve that, we just put this back. And actually, when I copy pasted, I sort of messed up all these. So we gotta basically push all these by one line out. Okay, so now that we have it correct, let's run this code. Guess the bird. So first, let's try a bird that's not in here. So let's put, I don't know, raven. It says guess the bird again because we're on our second try. So let's try another one that's not included. I don't know, what's a bird? I don't know, hummingbird. And then for the third one, I don't know any more birds, so I'm just gonna write it. So sorry, out of tries. So yeah, it does say sorry out of tries because we couldn't guess anything within these. So let's run this again, but now let's put raven at the first try, and let's try eagle because this is one of the bird names that we indicated. So we can see, yep, it says yes, second try, and we'll see similar behavior for the first and third tries. Okay, moving on. This is actually a new concept that we're covering. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because you honestly don't need to know this for core fundamentals. However, it can be really useful if you're displaying some sort of data to the user, or if you're sort of diagnosing why a specific string does not print and throws an error. So, we're all familiar with the print statement, but what if you need to print special characters, or you want new line functionality like we see here? Well, actually, for those, Python has some reserved characters or sequences of characters that we can use to tell the compiler to basically enter, so it returns to a new line. So you guys can read that thing up there while I run the example. So here we can see that when we do the slash and then we do n, that basically indicates a new line. So here, this first part prints, which is hello world, and it basically returns. So like if we were the console, you would hit enter. and then it prints this next part right here, which is I'm formatting print. Okay, so similarly, we can do /t to basically invoke a tab in the console. So if I run this, you can see, so we just have a couple of variables. And this is really useful if you want to, do a table kind of view like what this is doing, where you print something, you tab, and this basically forms a row, if, like within the table analogy. And here we're printing that. So we're going to do the variable with the tab operator plus another variable, and this could very well just be a bunch of spaces. However, however, when you do use tab, you can keep it consistent across systems and like different consoles. So if you are going to do it, we highly advise you to use the /t way of doing things. Okay, so this brings us to task 3. We basically have to print this message right here using these escape sequences. Now, the first part actually presents a problem because this sort of slash, which is the backslash, is a Python reserved character. So in order to print one backslash, we're gonna have to include 2 backslashes, because that basically tells the interpreter, stop, this is not a backslash, or sorry, stop, this is not a special backslash, it is just a normal backslash. So because to make 1 backslash you need 2, we're gonna have to put basically 6 backslashes for the first part to render these 3 backslashes. And since the next ones are just forward slashes, these are not reserved Python characters, we can just use these normal, like the normal amount. There we go. Yeah, this one is very similar to this one right here, so I'm not going to go over it, just in the interest of time. Okay, so this brings us to task 4, where we basically have to create a function and use that function within a conditional. So reading the instructions, we can see that we need to ask the user for a word that's in all caps and that begins with PRE. And if it meets both those conditions, a function has to return true. If it fails either one of those, the function has to return false. So to do this, we'll first use the def keyword along with the name for our function, which is pre-word. And then we'll need to get input from the user, so we're going to again use a query, something like that. And as you can see, I had to nest that line in because that's part of the function definition. Usually in Python, when you put a colon, you got to nest it in because it's indicating a nested code block. Okay, so we can test the first condition using the isAlpha string boolean method. So we can just do that. And since it's an if statement, we don't have to put equals true, because if we don't do that, it'll anyway imply that if this is true, execute the next code block. So if this is true, let's test the next condition, which is if it starts with PRE. So for that, we use the starts with string functions. If you're not familiar with these, we recommend you go watch the previous modules, or even email us if you really want. Like always, our contact information, emails, notebooks, and everything is linked in the description below. So if this is true, we're going to return true, like the instructions say, and if it's else here, we're going to return false. And even for the other else condition, we're going to return false. Because of the nested nature, it's very easy to see where this else correlates to, because you can just sort of draw a line and you can see that this else correlates with the very first if statement that we wrote. Okay, so I'm just going to run this to make sure we don't have any syntax errors, and we don't. So the next part is basically where we use this function to execute some conditionals. So in order to do that, we're going to have to save the output of this function to a variable. So I'm just going to create one right there. We're going to call it result. So basically what this does is it runs the function pre-word, and whatever is the result of the function gets stored within the result variable. So in our case, that'll be a Boolean, whether that's true or false. Okay, so now in order to basically complete the last 2 segments, we're going to have to do some conditional checking on this. So we basically have to check if result is true, this is a valid pre-word. If that is false, we just have to say it's not a valid capital pre-word. And then, like it says, we're going to provide some examples of words that start with pre, things like pray and prep. Okay, let's run this. Okay, so first let's enter a word that's in all caps, so pray. There we go. It says it is a valid pre-word. Let's try something that's not in all caps. It says it's not a valid capital word because right here, this statement resolves to false, so then it goes to else right here, and then it returns false, so it's not a valid pre-word. So again, let's try something else that's capital. Whoops. So let's try something that's capital. Let's do, I don't know, that. In this case, it will pass this condition. However, it won't pass this condition because it does not start with PRE. Okay, let's move on to task 5. This is a quite straightforward one. I'm sure you guys would have seen this. It's a fix the errors one. And this, if I run it, this is the message that we get. It basically throws a syntax error because this has to be within the quotes. As you see up here, the /n always has to be within quotes because it has to appear as part of the string so that the compiler knows that the actual escape method has to do with the string and it's not just a random like word that's injected within a function like this. So all we have to do is we basically have to remove those two quotation marks and replace that with a \n like that. There we go. Look at that. Over here, we can also do /t if you want a tab in between the words hello and world, like that. All right, so moving on to task 6, we have to create a rudimentary law tree backend. Right, so here reading the directions, it says that we're basically given a number, and depending on where that number lies, the prize is issued. So to do this, we have to define a custom function called lottery, which will perform all of our logic and basically accept one argument, which is the input number, and it will return the result, and that'll be, which prize the user has won. Right, so again, we're going to start off by making our custom function by using the def keyword. We're going to call it lottery because that's what the instruction says, and I'm just going to call the parameter input number because it's a number that we're inputting. Before we get inputs from the user, let's set some winning combinations. So here I've set win condition number 1, or actually prize number 1 and prize number 2. This could easily be extended to 3, 4, and even 5 if you really wanted. Just for the purposes of this video, we're just showing 2, just again in the interest of time. Okay, so given an input, first we have to check the very first winning condition. So to do that, we can do this. We have used this exact same approach within this module. We're basically checking if this substring exists in the wider win number 1 string. Just to note, although we're calling it number, the actual, number that we see is stored as a string on the computer because, as we've seen in previous modules, the input method the input method actually returns a string and not a number, and because of that we can use this string comparison, which basically compares two strings. And don't worry, if you don't see the input method, don't worry, I'll show you how we're going to implement it. We're not going to put it here, we're going to put it in a different way. Okay, so if this condition is not met, we have to check if it meets the other condition, which is win number 2, so that we can again do by putting else like this. So this else again corresponds to this because they're at the same, level, like in terms of hierarchy. So again, now here we're testing input number against win condition number 2 if that substring exists within win 2. So basically win number 1 correlates with a car, which is the sort of the high prize item, and then win number 2 is sort of the runners up. It's a $100 gift card. Like the instruction says, if we do not meet the winning combinations, we have to indicate that to the users. That can be implemented again using this else statement. So if neither of these conditions are met, it falls to here where it'll just say better luck next time. And that about wraps up our lottery method or lottery function. Now, you would have noticed that the input method where we gather input from the user is not listed here. And that's because we're passing it as a parameter already, so we don't have to do that within here. Now, as we discussed in the previous modules, you pass parameters using, through the parentheses, so you put lottery here, lottery there, and you'd pass your parameters, whatever string that may be. However, here we can actually nest functions. So, you could do answer equals input and then ask the user, or you could just nest input itself within here. And this is actually called a composite function. You might have heard that term in your mathematics lessons, or just anywhere else. Basically, that just means that a function that takes another function as an argument. So, so the computer will first run the innermost function, which is input, and whatever value gets returned from that function will be passed then to the outer function, which in our case is lottery. So basically, we'll get a string input from the user, which will automatically be passed into the lottery function. This is a very nice and neat and concise method to do it. Okay, so now let's run this. So first, let's test winning condition number 1. So we'll put any number from the win number 1 string. So let's do number 6. There we go. So resolve to this statement, as expected, you have won a car. Let's test some number from win number 2. Let's do 34, because why not? There we go. We have won a $100 gift card. Now let's test a number that's not in either of those winning arrays. Let's do, 58. It says better luck next time. Just for fun, let's test another number within win number 2. Let's do number 8 this time. So there we go. We can see that this method basically filters through all of this and checks if the input number substring exists, and then it resolves this code block right here. Okay, so that about wraps up this module. Again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to email us. Both of our emails are down in the description, along with the actual notebook, the empty version of the notebook, which you can follow as I'm talking through this. That's basically it. Thank you for watching.